Well, hello, everyone. I am so excited to have you back on another episode of Your Life, Your Story, Rise Up. I'm your host, Jill O'Boyle. Today, I'm so excited. I am joined with a guest, Megan Reed. Megan is a confidence coach, a boundaries expert. She's a Reiki healer here to help you own your weird and unleash your main character energy. She's the founder of the Creating Confidence Society and mastermind behind the Badass Boundaries Blueprint, and a co-host of the Hey Biz Besties Retreats. She's passionate about helping beautiful humans discover the magic of who they truly are so they can ditch their inner critic, get out of their own way, and unapologetically pursue their wildest dreams, whatever they may be. What an intro. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you. Thank you for the intro. I am so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you. I love your bio. Own your weird, get out of your own way, ditch the inner critic. It was like, I need to speak to this lady. These are all I love to own your own authentic self. I love to help people get out of their way, ditch that inner critic, unsubscribe from the hustle. So I thought this is going to be a good podcast. And so my podcast, as you know, we've talked a little bit about, the clients who I serve, but I talk a lot about purpose-driven life, finding your purpose, following your intuition, staying true to your authentic self. And then as I started season 2, I really wanted to get a feel from the audience of what do they need most? Like what content would best suit them? And so I did a quick survey, and the study said, most people are really wanting to know, how do we elevate our level of influence? How do we stand out? How do we be true to ourselves? And so I thought, when I read that you are a confidence coach, and as I coach my clients, this is one thing that always comes up, is this imposter syndrome and confidence. And so I thought, let's have you on and let's just hear your story and have you give your expertise and advice. So go ahead and just, dive in, Megan. Tell us a little bit about you and what got you kind of into the confidence coaching.
Yeah, well, a little bit about me. I am an Enneagram 1, and I consider myself a high achiever as well, a high performer, always going after that next thing that excites me.
Mm-hmm.
And working on my confidence as I go. I like saying, I keep it real. Integrity is a big piece of my business, knowing that if you're not doing it authentically, what's the point? If you're
Yeah.
not having fun. So that's just like a little bit about me. I am a heart-centered entrepreneur, and as well as a clinical hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, and I'm just the spiritual Frankie to your grace, no bullshit, self-love cheerleader that you have
Yes.
been looking for.
I love it. It's so needed. And you're right. Like, I am like, if you are not your authentic self, like, what's the point? And I think so many people, I'm one of them, as a people pleaser, kind of lost myself for a minute there. I was very intuitive as a young child and very much authentic. Like, here I am, take it or leave it. But society kind of took over a little bit, and I hid behind my true identity for so long, which leads to burnout. So I love that you are pushing this movement forward because it's so needed. It's something that I think truly everybody needs to hear, this message. And the other thing that I loved about your title was you said you're a boundaries expert. I
Yes.
know from personal experience how much boundaries matter. They are super important. So I thought maybe we could dive a little bit, because I do think the confidence and boundaries and elevating your influence, I think they're all kind of tied together. So I thought, let's talk about boundaries a little bit, something I haven't really shared a lot on my podcast. So I think it would be beneficial for the listeners to hear. So let's start. Let's kind of, for people maybe listening that don't really understand what we're talking about, what are boundaries? Why are they important? Let's just start there.
Yeah, totally. Boundaries. Oh, wow, what a big topic, right?
Yes.
To you know, put it all into a tiny little nutshell, I would say that boundaries are expectations that we communicate. And those are expectations on how people treat us, how we treat ourselves, how we treat others. Essentially,
Mm-hmm.
they are guidelines into how we want to live our lives. And you could describe a boundary as kind of like a fence with a gate where, you decide when that gate is open, when it's closed, and what energy you allow into your world,
Yeah.
rather than boundaries being a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Boundaries are not a wall. We're not keeping everybody out all the time. What we're doing with that fence and the gate is deciding, this is the line between my property and my neighbor's property. What's my responsibility and what's not,
Yeah.
and how I can protect myself with that boundary.
Yeah, absolutely. So expectations, guidelines, just rule of thumb of how you are showing up, that way other people know, right? Like what to
Yeah,
expect out of you. I love
yeah.
that. So why then we know this, right? We know we need them. We know that we need to have good boundaries. We need to also communicate them. Why do people struggle so much with them? Why would you think is the biggest reason why people just let them go out the window?
Biggest reason, I would say there's a couple big reasons why we struggle setting boundaries. And one of them, one of the biggest ones is we fear that we will lose the love of others if we set
Mm,
boundaries. We fear that they'll become upset with us, that like discomfort, difficult conversation, any kind of confrontation. We're like, oh, I would rather, people just
mhm.
avoid it. And another reason people don't set boundaries is because they're so deeply rooted in the people pleasing, and just wanting to say yes to everyone else, that they're not willing to say no, which is really tough on your energy.
Yes. Oh my gosh. When I did a whole deep dive into my burnout and the struggles that I was having and how did I get here, right? It was like a true intentional, like something needs to change. And then it was more like I need to change. Like what's the common denominator here, Jill? Like it's you, right?
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
was the thing is like I'm a high Enneagram 3. So I work with high achievers, high performers. And that is one of the biggest things for us as high achievers is the people pleasing.
Mhm.
And we are such a great, we are people that people come to us and they're like, "Oh, well Jill will get it done. Like, let me give it to her." And so we love that. But that can like burn us out and that can really hold us. And so we instead of saying, "You know what? I actually don't have capacity for that," or I maybe tomorrow I can get to that, but not today. Like we just keep saying yes, right? That yes girl mentality, that people pleasing.
Mhm.
And that's the thing that I realized. Like I had no boundaries and I was
Yeah.
not, or if I did, I was not clearly communicating them at all. And so like you said, people pleasing, I can see where that can show up for high achievers. And then the fear, like you said, fear, a couple of those words were fear. And I always say people pleasing and fear will hold you back from so many things.
Mhm.
So it's so funny that they're tied rootly to why people also don't hold the boundaries was because fear of people pleasing. It's like it can really control, right? Our life if
Yeah.
we're not intentional about it.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
so wild how all those things are connected underneath the umbrella of confidence. We don't set boundaries because we are not confident in ourselves and our abilities to do so.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it's this whole imposter syndrome word that comes up so many times. And I actually just did a presentation to the University of Berkeley on this. Hugely successful people, right? Intelligent people, smart individuals. Most of them are high achievers. And if you want to get to your next level of success, if you want to grow in your level of influence, like you've got to recognize that this imposter syndrome can control your level of influence, your level of success, because subconsciously what it's telling us is you're not good enough. Like you're only successful because, well, you just got lucky, right? These are like what these high achiever leaders that I work with like think. And it's like, we've got to rewire this thinking, build this confidence up and say, yeah, that's just my mind talking, like, and just move forward. Easier said than done. I know from My own experience, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's wild that you say that too, because these wildly successful people, your audience listening, you've got the strategy. Like you're a high performer, you know how to get there. What's holding you back is the confidence and the imposter syndrome and the boundaries. It's the mental mindset, mind shift pieces
Mm-hmm.
um, behind the strategy that you know already.
Yeah. So what would you say are some examples of boundaries that you see that need set the most? Like when it comes, if we're talking about these successful high achievers, high performers, like give some examples. Like what does that even look like?
Totally. One of the biggest places that I see that, successful high performers need boundaries is around their time and their energy,
Mm,
especially when it comes to work.
yeah.
Um,
Yes.
so, an example would be, say you are a designer or somebody who has hourly clients or packages or things like that, and you get an email at 6 p.m. on a Friday. Um, if you don't have boundaries, you're probably going to respond to that email.
Mm-hmm.
Um, an example of a boundary here would be communicating this either in your contract or upfront and saying, hey, these are my office hours. I will respond to you,
Yeah.
whenever that timeline looks like for you. That's an example of a boundary that protects your time. You don't work when you're not working,
Yeah.
you go to your kid's basketball game or you go watch TV, you're not tied to your computer. What setting that boundary does, it gives you control back of your time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the biggest boundaries I see needed, because when you don't have that boundary, you're just on the burnout express because you're always saying yes to everyone else. Like, when do you get to live?
Right. Oh, which is so important. That's why we're all here on this earth, right? Don't forget that we have a life to live too outside of work and being a mom and being a wife or whatever. Like we have a life to just enjoy and have fun. Yeah, this came up just this other week in our household with my corporate world when I was struggling with burnout. It was the value of my own time. Like I saw no value in like my personal time. And so like when I decided to get intentional and start creating these habits, like I started to get in a motion of like pre-deciding the life I wanted to live. That was the first like huge thing. But then like setting those boundaries. So I pre-decided like if family is important to me and my core value, okay, I'm giving 8 hours of my time to this work. And so I will pre-decide that at 5 o'clock, that is my time to go home. And then from this time till my kids go to bed, that's family time. Like I would say, right? Would that be a good example of like setting a hard boundary?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
100%, because if you say at 6 p.m. you were to be continuing to work, your clients then become to expect that from you. They no
Mhm.
longer see that boundary as important. And something that I like to tell my clients all the time is you teach people how to treat you. And if you set a
Yeah.
boundary and then you go back on that boundary, that's confusing for them. And what we want to be is clear, because, Brene Brown says, clear is kind. So when we
Mhm.
set a boundary, we want to live that boundary as well. So it's not confusing for the person on the other end of it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense so we just instilled this in our family home with the social media boundary and the
Mm-hmm.
phone limiting because I started just, I'm a learner. I love to learn. So I've been just reading more and more. My kids are 10 and 7 and they're very easily starting to be addicted to the electronics like everybody. It's just consuming our world, but there's so much studies and research on we're really sabotaging our children's and ours like creativity, like
Mm-hmm.
our gifts, our strengths, which is like something I coach on. It's so important where when we don't have something to do, we're just immediately looking to an electronic device to feed our minds. And like, that's not always like, it's great when you're listening to an inspirational podcast or something that's very learning, but children are probably like streaming YouTube and just filling with nonsense, like really. Um, and so I was like, okay, we're going to make a hard stop at, you guys have a limit on your screen time. That's a boundary. Like we're saying no more. And then because of that, I said, I know that with my work, it's very tempting as a coach and as a speaker, like to get on social media and just check and see all the things. But I'm like, I know in my corporate career, there were certain things that really burned me out. And I could see that social media could be a thing that where I would start to, well, it's work. Let me just tap into here just for a little bit. And then that would go to, that little bit would be an hour later.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, if we're going to instill boundaries on our children, where between these hours, they're not allowed to be on their iPad, well, we need to be setting that same example. And like, so we created like a basket in our house where at this point, 5:30, electronics are shut off. We put them in the basket on top of the fridge where we're not easily able to grab them and reach there for them. And, they're done. And so I'm like, but it was hard even for me. Like, but I like what you said, like clear is kind. Like that would not have been a good boundary to just say, hey kids, no more. You can't be on social media or you can't be on YouTube. You can't be on your iPad. But yet here, my husband and I are over making dinner and we're just scrolling and talking.
Yeah.
That's very confusing for a kid. Well, why us and not you, So
Yeah.
that became clear, honestly, just I'm admitting it, like just the other week or so, I'm like, I need to be practicing what I'm teaching too. Like this needs to be a family thing. And it's been huge. I mean,
Yeah.
just the level of just let's talk, let's communicate, like let's bring back normal things where we don't all have to be glued to our screen.
Yes. I
Yeah.
love, and to that realm with social media around, like with business owners, one of the biggest things you can do to protect your time and energy is to turn off your notifications. Turn
Mm,
off that little red badge that pops up anytime somebody likes your post or comments on your post or sends you an email.
yeah.
Turn this off and schedule in time where you go in to check your email and check your social media so that you have control of your time and not literally everybody else in the entire world.
I love that. So I coach on productivity habits. And so I love like scheduling the time, like make it a thing where you're like, okay, it doesn't have to control my whole day. I have already scheduled from 9 to 10 that I will check those or whatever, time it is. That's so good. I love that. Okay. So we gave an example of time and energy, example of how we can set boundaries around social media usage. Any other examples that has really worked for maybe some of your high achievers that you've worked with?
I would say one that, especially high achievers, but really everyone in the world, a boundary that really works well is around sleep. And
Mm,
because if you aren't getting good sleep, you're not as productive the next day. You cannot function fully. Your brain is running, wild on empty because you had a blue light in your face all night. One of the best boundaries you can set for yourself to improve your quality of sleep is to um, turn your phone to grayscale, turn your phone off an hour before bed. That personal boundary that you have with yourself is that you're not on your phone.
yeah.
And there's even, I mean, the phones are getting so smart now. My phone at like 8 p.m. just like silences all notifications, and sometimes I'll open it and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I have like 10 texts. I had no idea because it didn't notify me. But this is you protecting your sleep so that you can
Mhm.
show up better as your big, true, energetic self the next day.
Yeah. Oh, it's so important. I am a huge believer of habits and creating like very healthy habits, and you can be intentional about those. Um so that's where I was going to go is how do we start setting these boundaries? And I'm just curious with you because I know for me there's like some non-negotiables that I have in my house like that have to be done, but I just want your advice like for people that are like these all sound great. How do I get started? What's like one thing I can do to just start creating boundaries in my life or in my business?
Totally. The
Yeah.
first step in setting any kind of boundary is kind of a self awareness, mindfulness practice where you're checking in with yourself and saying, how are things going where could things improve and what do I need to implement in order to make that connection between where
Mm,
I am and where I want to be. And oftentimes, you're going to notice that as some kind of feeling in your body. So for me, when I can tell that a boundary needs to be set, I'm going to feel like kind of heavy in my chest or like dread in my stomach or just like tightness in my throat. Like it's going to be a physical symptom of something that happened that's alerting me that, hey, maybe there's something I could be doing differently here. And then once
mm-hmm.
I identify what it is that made me feel that way, I then identify how I want to feel and what boundary I need to communicate with whom. And it could be with myself and it could be with somebody else. So, for example, here's another example of a boundary. I work from home. I work in my office as a coach, so I don't have to leave. And I love that because Sonora, my daughter, is napping in the room next door and my husband's chiropractor, and we just like share her,
Yeah.
a boundary that I had to set with him was that, when she would wake up from her nap, he would bring her in here. And, I just love that. I want to see her, but it completely
Oh, yeah.
wrecked any kind of productive flow I was in. And so I had to say, hey, and I would get resentful. I'd feel that in my body. And it was a weird cognitive dissonance because I wanted to see her, but
Yeah.
also it was just wrecking my schedule. And so, I noticed that feeling and I had, I communicated with him. I was like, hey, so I made the observation. I noticed you're bringing her into my office. And then, I love that. However, it makes me feel, whatever type of way that this is making you feel. And then you communicate what you need. I'm like, I really need this time in my office. Um, even though I really want to see her. And that has been so helpful. And he totally understood. And that's the thing about setting boundaries is it's a way to improve relationships. Because if I would have
Yes.
never said something, I would have just been resentful all the time. I would have been like, you don't appreciate my
Mm.
work. There's so many things I could have internalized about that. But, clear as kind, I said, hey, I need you to get out.
Yeah. That is so good because you can set boundaries, but if you don't communicate them,
Mhm.
what's the point?
Yeah.
And like so many women are so fearful to communicate things for fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of just, not getting the like or the warm and fuzzy back. But it's really doing the other person a service too, because like you said, they have no idea that it's
Yes.
even an issue, so they won't ever change. So
Right.
you have to
Yes.
communicate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot expect anyone to read your mind. So if you're
No.
not communicating, if you're upset about something and you have said nothing, that's on you.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it is. I had the same thing. So just to recap what Megan said. So basically feel, how do we start this is it was really tune into your feelings,
Mhm.
which is really huge. Like what's coming up for you, right? That you're not really liking, and then identify what that is. And then next is, well, how do you want that to feel? And then communicate that appropriately.
Mhm.
That's so important. I had the same thing as I started working from home and my kids getting off the bus, they're home by like 2:30. And same thing, I was just starting to feel like like an anxiety and frenzy all around that time of day. And I had to just realize like, okay, we have to reprioritize. Like you're not going to record a podcast at 3 o'clock when the kids are home, or why are you focusing on a hard project right now at this time of day? So just scheduling it in. So it's like blocked from, knowing that from 2:30 to 3, that's my time where it's a good time to take a mental break, welcome the kids home, get snacks, get them set up, figure out homework, and then tidy up the day, do the less things. Like it's just, and I had to, just communicate. Now, if there are important things, I would just tell the kids that morning, hey, when you guys come in, mommy has an exception today. We're going to need to be a little bit quieter when you guys come home. Like, but on the majority, I want that time because then it's just making them feel well received. They're coming home from school. They feel loved. And of course, I can't wait to see them. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, we got 3 more hours of work, kids. That is so good. Such great advice and so needed, because I do believe it's an area where I think most people, I know the people that you probably coach, so same as me, like it is a struggle, and it just takes practice. I always say practice makes progress. Like the more that you just start implementing it and putting these boundaries in place, like it will change your life. Like you said, it will actually make you more productive. I would say boundaries are huge because it will set the boundaries. It'll help you be more productive, make you feel better, get you back to your authentic self, being able to speak freely, own your
Yeah.
weird if you want. I love that. So tell me a little bit. I, of course, was just kind of looking at you on Instagram, your website, trolling you a little bit. And I saw you have this whole Creating Confidence Society. So share with the listeners, like, what's that all about? Dive in a
Yeah.
little bit more about that.
The Creating Confidence Society. Yes. So this is my heart and soul. The Creating Confidence Society is a membership for humans to kind of come together, learn about themselves, and just consistently pursue a better version of themselves and their favorite version of themselves. And what this looks like is support, accountability, education, inspiration, motivation, all those pieces to the puzzle that you're looking for, wrapped up in just a supportive community. And
Huge.
it's huge. And every month we have monthly topics based off of kind of what the members inside are dealing with. So we've had boundaries trainings. We're about to have a people pleasing training. There are so many like pieces to confidence, but I would say one of the biggest pieces is we feel like we're alone. And that
Yes.
is the problem that this society is solving. Everyone in here is just so supportive and loving, and it's a great place to level up with people who are also leveling up.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Helping them rise up, right? Rise up to their
Yeah.
full potential.
Yes.
So good. The community it is really the best thing that you can really do. Honestly, I felt when I was going through my life, and I feel like my clients can speak to this too, is that you feel so alone at times.
Mhm.
And like, we should never feel that way, because there is just so many resources. There are so many people that are going through the same thing as you, and to get in a community where you can lift each other up and support one another. Like, I love that you're creating this, because it's so huge. And then I also saw like there's retreats too. Like, is this for the women in the society?
Yeah, absolutely. It's for, I mean, everyone in the world, but I love what you said earlier about community being one of the most important parts, because that's a big part of the retreats that we host as well. So the retreats, it's called Hey Biz Besties. And what those are a chance for you to just like get out of your business, get away from the daily grind, the hustle, the momming if you have children, and
Yeah.
just recharge and give yourself a chance to work on your business instead of in it.
Mm.
When we're home and in the office, a lot of times we are just nose down, grinding and completing all the things that need to be completed. But when you go to a Hey Biz Besties, there's masterminding in the pool, we have brand photo shoots. It's just a really fun way to build community, network with ideal clients. Most I would say actually almost everyone walked away from the last retreat with a new client, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Like there's an immediate return on investment there, and it's just so much fun. Community is so important, as you can see.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, and getting
absolutely.
around like-minded people that like want to grow, want to rise up, want to show up as their true authentic self. Like, that's
Yes.
like already a reason to go, right? Just to be with that support. I mean, sounds like a party that I might need to look into further, because sounds like my kind of people.
Yes, yeah, absolutely join us, please. Yes,
And
we'd love that.
and for the ones that are listening, I like looked, and it's like fun spots, like true like Costa Rica, right? And like
Yes,
somewhere
yes.
else. Phoenix?
In May, we're headed to Scottsdale and Sedona. Like we do an entire day trip to Sedona. We have a private driver. His name is Jim. We love him. And
Oh,
we visit all the energy vortexes in Sedona. We go to crystal shops. We have lunch with an incredible view. That's Arizona. And then we hit Costa Rica in September. And
awesome.
we still have a few spots left. So
Okay.
if you're listening,
Yeah,
you should come to Hey Biz Besties.
absolutely. Where do they find more information at, Megan?
You can find more information on Hey Biz Besties at heybizbesties.com, or on my Instagram at my link in bio. We're actually, I don't know when this episode is airing, but we're hosting a informational happy hour this week as well. I imagine this will have already happened. We're speaking to you from the past.
Yeah.
Yes, but the link in my bio, I'm sure Jill will attach my Instagram in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely will.
For you for sure. Or just send me a DM and I'm happy to send you all the information.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that sounds like so much fun. So check that out. And for everybody that is listening and their heart just said yes, and then their mind just said no, like I want to always remind every single one of you, like self-care is not selfish. It is badass. Like every single one of us are busy, either, professional women, moms, whatever it may be. But I always say, if you want to serve others in your capacity, like you have to fill yourself up first. And so take that time to I love what you said, like work for your, or what did you say? Work on your, yes, work on instead of in. And it gives you that freedom to just go and really truly do that. That's awesome.
Yes. No dishes to do, no children, partners to take care of. Like we have assistants that do that for you. It's truly a luxurious experience.
That's so awesome. Thank you for creating the space for that. It's truly something awesome, amazing, needed. We need more and more women to just really feel they're worth it. Like you are worth it.
Yes.
So great. Well, I'll include all that information in the show notes, and truly appreciate you coming on, Megan, bringing your expertise, your advice, your tips. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.